Fab. Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Lawrie Baker. I'm from Active Surrey, so we're a team based within Surrey County Council, and our role, the clues in the title, is around helping people to live more active and healthy lives. So I'm delighted to join you all today, albeit a couple of days earlier, to talk about your options for an active life as you prepare for adulthood. So thanks very much to Family Voice Surrey for inviting me along to be part of this week of events, and I hope that you find what I have to say useful, interesting, informative. So I thought I'd start off with something called the Wheel of Wellbeing, which has been developed through a body of international evidence which links our happiness with longer and more fulfilling lives with better mental and physical health, stronger relationships, and a range of other psychological, social, and economic benefits. So there's a team that have developed this whole framework that people can use as a tool, and we use it within Surrey County Council actually to support staff in Surrey County Council's case, but generally people to live more happy, fulfilling, and healthy lives. So you can see right at the top there, body, be active. Is one of the 6 central strands of the Wheel of Wellbeing. I suppose just to whiz through the others, we've got obviously mind, keep learning. So if we keep our bodies active, we should also keep our minds active. There's spirit and give, so that might be around doing sort of voluntary work or being generous in our spirits generally helps us to live more happy lives. People are really important to people, and so making those connections with others in whatever way you may do that is really important to mental health and living a healthy and happy life. Taking an enjoyment in our surroundings, so I suppose you could say that's almost mindfulness, really kind of being conscious of where we are and what we're doing, and also taking care of the planet is the final one there. So you can probably see there's lots of ways that lots of things that people can do can help them to live more healthy and fulfilling lives. But for what we're going to focus on today, obviously, is that one at the top there, body, be active. So that, that's one set of reasons for maintaining physical activity. Another is that it's really good for our physical health. So we've talked about mental health, and now I wanted to just focus on physical health. Physically active people tend to live healthier lives. There are lower health risks from a wide range of ailments and illnesses that can develop throughout our lives. So obviously there's cognitive decline, so that's kind of dementia. You can decrease the risk of that by 40% by being physically active, which is huge. Type 2 diabetes by 35%, hypertension or high blood pressure by 33%, depression by almost 50%, which is just amazing, really. Whoops. And cancers by up to 20%, bone fractures by 66%, breast cancer 20%, and coronary heart disease and stroke by 25%. So a huge number of reasons there to keep physical activity as a part of your life to I suppose if you often hear it said that if physical activity was a pill, then everyone would take it. It would be prescribed left, right and centre by doctors because it can have such a positive impact on your physical health. So can't really stress that enough, but we'll take that as read now and move on to some other key facts. So unfortunately, disabled adults are twice as likely as non-disabled adults to be physically inactive. So the rates actually there are 42% of disabled adults are inactive. That means doing less than 30 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity a week, versus 21% of non-disabled adults. So quite stark figures there, and hopefully we can do something about that as your generation moves into adulthood. That said, though, 81%, 4 in 5 disabled people would like to be more active. So there's clearly some things that are stopping people. 1 in 3, or almost 1 in 3, 32% of disabled people agree that sport is for someone like them. So on the flip side, though, that means that 68% of people don't agree that sport is for somebody like them. So yeah, we'll come on to this in a bit more detail, what this actually means for people and for individuals. But the chief medical officer, who we've heard mentioned quite a lot during the pandemic, has a kind of set of guidelines, physical activity guidelines they're called, and these are to maintain good health physically and mentally. Adults in England should take part in at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity each week. So it's 2.5 hours of moderate intensity physical activity, and that can be done in bouts of 10 minutes or more. So you could do it all in one go if you wanted to, if you went for a long bike ride, for example, or did something else for 2.5 hours. That's fine, but it can be broken down into chunks of 10 minutes. You could do 15 chunks of 10 minutes. I thought it was worth looking at what the data since the pandemic has struck is telling us around people's physical activity rates. Now, generally speaking, the population as a whole is 7% fewer people are achieving those government guidelines of 150 minutes a week, and 7% more people are doing less than 30 minutes. So that's the overall population as a whole, but we know that people, disabled people, are more inactive as a result, and more inactive than the general population as a result of the pandemic. So the pandemic, unfortunately, is affecting disabled people and their ability to be physically active disproportionately more than the kind of rest of the population. So yeah, with those numbers in our mind, I thought we could move on to look in a bit more detail at what the Chief Medical Officer's guidance actually tells us. So adults from age 19 to 64, so that will be hopefully most of you very, very soon, if not already, should be aiming for that 150 minutes, as I've said already, in bouts of 10 minutes a week. If you're going to be particularly vigorous though, so that's raising your heart rate a lot, then you could actually do that in 75 minutes. So I guess the key point is that it's what we describe as moderate intensity physical activity means that it's raising your heart rate, you're breathing harder, you might be starting to sweat, but if you're going to go into that vigorous category, your heart rate will absolutely be a lot harder. Your breathing will become laboured, and definitely you would be sweating once you get into that vigorous category of physical activity. So it's also worth noting that it's a bit more complicated than just saying we need to be physically active, because it's recommended that adults should do muscle strengthening activities at least 2 days a week as well. So that might be actual lifting weights and doing, kind of a workout with weights involved, but it could be body weight exercises equally. So yoga, push-ups, or many of the things that you'll see on kind of YouTube videos that we'll probably come on to talk about in a moment. Or it could even be carrying heavy shopping. Could be doing gardening, possibly, if you're putting a lot of effort into it. Perhaps not pushing a lawnmower around, but if you were to start digging, for example, that level of gardening would certainly count. The key point, though, really is that people need to minimise the amount of time spent being sedentary, i.e. not moving around or sitting for extended periods. I'm particularly guilty of this. I work an office job, so sometimes we'll be spending 7 hours a day sitting down. It's really important to break that up and get up every hour and move around. There's masses of scientific evidence to show that the benefits to our physical and mental well-being from doing just short bursts of activity like that is huge. So I guess to kind of sum it up, move more to stay healthy. So that we could start thinking about what people could do, what could individuals do, and I've broken that down into 3 kind of areas. So going to the gym, exercising at home, or maybe joining a club. So we can maybe look at those in a bit more detail. There are around 30 leisure centres that are owned by local councils. So wherever you live in the county, your local borough or district council will own and run public gyms that you can go to, and you can be a member. You can, pay and play. These would be the places where your local swimming pool would be, for example. So they're generally not run by the local council. I suppose to look at a few examples, in Egham, Achieve Lifestyle run the local leisure centre there. Guildford Spectrum is run by Freedom Leisure on behalf of Guildford Borough Council. In Waverley, it's Places Leisure. They also run leisure centres in Mole Valley. Surrey Heath, who are building one at the moment. So there isn't a leisure centre in Surrey Heath at the moment, but there will be from mid 2021, I believe it's due to open. There are also a number of private gyms around though. So those are places that you could also go to. You might be surprised at how welcoming most public gyms are. The staff are really well trained, and many have experience of adapting workouts for disabled people. We've run some training for leisure centre staff in the past, and in our experience, many personal trainers really thrive on the challenge of planning bespoke exercise programs for all kinds of needs. No two people are the same when they walk into a leisure centre, so I think it's important to kind of get into our minds that whenever a personal trainer is planning a workout for somebody, they'll always be thinking of that individual. So, the person might have a pre-existing injury. There might be specific things that they have been told not to do by their doctor. So it's absolutely part of a personal trainer's job to be planning specific workouts for the person in front of them, irrespective of any disabilities that somebody may have. So please don't be put off from going to your local gym. As I say, they're really, really welcoming. They would love you to go and make use of their facilities, obviously subject to social distancing. One particularly great example, if you happen to live in the east of Surrey, is East Surrey YMCA in Redhill, which is a fully accessible, inclusive gym and leisure centre. They've revamped it recently with some funding from the Lottery, and it really is a kind of shining example of best practice. So if you're lucky enough to live near Redhill, absolutely go and check it out if you haven't been there already. It doesn't have a swimming pool, but it's got everything else you could possibly want from a leisure centre. Have you been exercising at home, online during lockdown? Maybe it might be something that you've tried because other opportunities to get out and be active were kind of taken away from all of us a bit during lockdown. There are so many different workout options to suit all abilities, and it can be a bit daunting, I guess, to kind of think, well, how do I know who I can trust? Some of the most popular include Yoga with Adrian, you might have heard of that, or Joe Wicks, also known as the Body Coach, who obviously was doing PE with Joe Wicks during lockdown, which my kids certainly enjoyed at home, and I know millions of other people have taken part in. But he doesn't just do workouts for kids, he has a number of high impact interval training workouts, HIIT workouts as they're known. Joe Wicks isn't, of course, the only person offering them, and Yoga with Adrian isn't the only yoga that you can do online. So there is a huge array that you can choose from. It can be really motivating to work out alongside someone. So I know that just the act of putting your computer or TV on and logging onto something, that you're going to be exercising for 15, 20 minutes or longer if you choose to. But it's that much harder to stop doing it if you've got someone there who's encouraging you. I suppose it's like going to an exercise class in a leisure centre. It's really motivating. So I suppose one of my kind of tips for that is, if you've not tried it before, you could try with a pre-recorded session first of all, so that you're not joining a live online session with a webcam so that people have to see you. There are plenty of pre-recorded content. There is plenty of pre-recorded content. So you can try it out if you like it, and then perhaps you could, if you wanted to, move on to live classes in due course. And I guess the thing to say about live classes is most of them won't need you to have your webcam on. It can be useful to see if you're making the right shapes that your exercise instructor is asking you to make, but it's by no means required. So if you're shy or just don't want people to see you sweating, then you don't need to have your webcam turned on. I put a web address on this slide there, which is for our activity finder. So we kind of buy into an activity finder that our colleagues at London Sport have developed, and it's called Get Active. When you first go on to Get Active, if you go onto that website, you'll be able to choose whether you want to do in-person exercise or online exercise. So there's a whole range of stuff that you can search in there. So it's kind of curated. So I suppose it's a good place to start because you know that you'll be getting a decent product. The exercise instructors will be professional, they'll be qualified, it will be safe. Whereas if you just go onto YouTube and search for a random exercise program, you may get lucky and find one that's great and appropriate, but equally you might not, and it might just be somebody who's not qualified, who's perhaps encouraging people to do things that might be dangerous or might not be safe. So I think it's important to make sure that you know the exercise program, if you're going to follow one online, is a safe one. So yeah, I would encourage people to have a look at Get Active as a starting point. I think a good example of that locally actually is someone that we've supported called Synergy Dance. So they've developed a whole load of audio described content. So there's yoga, dance and meditation classes for visually impaired people. And they also have general inclusive dance classes online. So if you want to search up Synergy Dance, SYNERGY, Synergy Dance, you'll find their content online. That's really good. There are other providers though locally offering exercise classes, including the Grange Centre in Bookham, Halo Project, Surrey Choices, and many others. So you might be involved with some of these organisations already. I expect if you are, you probably already know that they do have an online offering. It's a great way for people to exercise in the kind of current climate and maintain social distancing. So definitely one that we can and should all try and do. The final point on this slide was around joining a club, but we'll come on to that in a bit more detail. But there are a lot of sports clubs in the county that I would encourage you to consider if you haven't done or don't already play a sport and you fancy playing a team sport, for example. So we'll look at those now. So one of my favourite local clubs is Wheels for All. You can see them pictured in the slide there. I'm trying to think which venue that's at. That might be at Woking Sports Box, possibly. That's their Facebook page where you can find out all about what they've got going on, but they run weekly inclusive cycling sessions at Woking Sports Box, at Epsom Harrier Centre and Leatherhead Leisure Centre. Now, Leatherhead, I think, is an indoor one and it's on a soft surface, much as you'll see there at the athletics track. That's not concrete, it's a spongy surface. So if you were to fall off a bike, it's a pretty soft landing, it's fairly gentle, you shouldn't be too badly hurt. Obviously people, as you can see, wear helmets anyway, but Wheels for All claim that they've got bikes for everybody and that I think they're yet to find somebody that they haven't managed to get on a bike. So you can see there are side-by-side tandems, there are front and back tandems, and you'll see that the one in the front there is a tandem tricycle. They also have tandems where you can wheel a wheelchair on, so people can use their arms to turn the pedals next to somebody who's pedaling alongside them with standard foot pedals. So yeah, really great organisation, and thoroughly encourage you to have a look at that if you haven't done previously or you've been put off from cycling. Next, football, the national sport, the nation's favourite sport, perhaps. There are 13 inclusive football clubs in rural Surrey. If you live in the north of the county, Surrey FA, whose website I've listed on this slide, they also cover some of the metropolitan London boroughs, so Merton, Kingston, Richmond and Sutton. So they also have clubs up in kind of those metropolitan boroughs, which, you know, as I say, if you live in the north of the county, it's not too far to travel into some of those clubs. There's the Surrey Football for All League, which has got 4 adult divisions and 3 junior divisions. Some of you may already have played in the junior divisions, I don't know. Plus the Surrey Community Football League, which is run by Woking FC, and the Surrey College Disability League, and the Inclusive Adults League. So there is a lot of inclusive football going on in the county. And as a starting point, I'd encourage you to have a look at Surrey FA's website. If you haven't played for a long time, or you want to get back into the game, they'll be able to signpost you to those adult clubs that play in those leagues. There'll also be informal football available if you didn't want to play competitively, but you still fancied playing football. Rugby might come as a surprise to you that there is inclusive rugby in Surrey. There is something called mixed ability rugby, which is kind of being pioneered within the county by Chobham Rugby Club. They're working with Harlequins on a programme of delivery. So mixed ability rugby involves people with disability playing alongside able-bodied people, and they play matches and tournaments around the country. The great thing about mixed ability rugby is that the rules are flexible, and you can get involved to a level of contact that you're comfortable with. So obviously, full contact rugby is at one end of the spectrum, and then no contact rugby is at the other. And there are kind of graduated steps that players can progress through if they want to, or if for whatever reason they can't or don't want to play full contact, but they can play some level of contact, then adaptations can be made to the game, so that people can experience the level of rugby that they're comfortable with, alongside other people experiencing rugby to different levels. It sounds complicated, but believe me, the people that I've seen playing it are having an absolute blast while they're doing it, so it looks like an awful lot of fun. So yeah, do have a look at Chobham Rugby Club if you're interested in rugby. Tennis, if you're looking for coaching or competition, then 2 of the best clubs to contact are Surbiton Tennis Club or the Bourne Club. Many other clubs will be able to offer tennis for disabled people, but I would say these are 2 of the ones that specialise, but they're probably more competitive, so they will be able to coach you, but they'll also be able to provide you with competitive opportunities should you want that. And I just thought at this point it's worth mentioning that the vast majority of sports clubs really do want to be inclusive, but they don't all go about promoting themselves maybe in the most accessible ways. So not everyone wants to go to a disability-specific club or session. If you want to play a specific sport and you know there's a club that's local and convenient to you, there's nothing to stop you contacting them and asking about coming along to try it out. It's best to be as open as possible. They may need a bit of help adapting to your specific needs, or they may just get it straight away. In my opinion, it's really time that mainstream sport was more open and accessible, and we've all got a part to play in that. The more disabled people who approach mainstream sports clubs and ask to join, the better clubs will get, and the more normal it will become for people of all abilities to play and enjoy sport together. So I guess just then backtracking a little bit and considering again where there are specific accessible sessions. Swimming, there's an organisation called Dolphins. They run weekly adult swimming sessions, inclusive, in Guildford at Surrey Sports Park, in Woking. I'm pointing, you don't know, I'm in Woking. At Pool in the Park, just down the road from where I'm sitting now, and at Oxted at Tandridge Leisure Centre. So the great thing about the Woking and Tandridge sessions in Oxted are that they're in the lagoon. So when I say lagoon, that means it's not a square pool with sides, but it's the bit with the wave machine. So you can kind of move into the water, either walking or in a water wheelchair, as if you were at a beach. So you go in kind of gradually rather than splash straight into the deep water. So they found that that's really accessible for people. As I say, there are water wheelchairs if people need wheelchairs to get in, or various other ways of getting in and out of the water. They have physios on hand to help people, and lots of volunteers to help with any care needs that people might have getting in, out and from the water. A great place to learn to swim, or for swimming lessons if you're lacking in confidence, is Great Waves. They operate in Mole Valley, I think out of Dorking Leisure Centre, but I might be wrong. I think they might do it at a private school as well, actually. but Great Waves, lots of experience in teaching disabled people to swim, so encourage you to check them out if that's of interest. Hockey has really taken off actually in Surrey recently, so there have been Flyers sessions. Flyers is inclusive hockey, so pan-disability hockey. It's played on a zone format, I think, so that people can be matched up with different abilities, and I think they take a bit of a mixed ability approach along, similar to rugby. So there has historically been a session at Hazelmere Hockey Club, but more recently there have been new sessions set up at Surbiton, Weybridge, excuse the typo on that one, Weybridge with a D, and Guildford Hockey Clubs. You can check out England Hockey's website to find out. There may be others that are springing up, or of course you could just Google Flyers Hockey Surrey or your local area, Flyers with a Z, as you can see on that slide. In non-COVID times, there are, and there may again soon be, park runs that take place every week for free across the county. So there's one in Alice Holt Forest in Farnham, in Cranley, Frimley Lodge in Surrey Heath, Guildford in Stoke Park, Woking in Woking Park, Homewood, which is in Runnymede, Brooklands in Tonbridge, Mull Valley, which takes place at Denby's Vineyard, Reigate Priory, Banstead Woods, and Hazelwood, which is where London Irish train stays. So as it kind of says on the slide, there are at many of these park runs, there are people who've been trained in guide running to support people with a visual impairment. There's also once a month, I think it's normally the last Saturday of the month now, something called 5K Your Way, which is in partnership with Macmillan specifically for people recovering from or surviving cancer. I think the key thing to say about parkrun is it's a really welcoming and inclusive community, and there are always people that walk parkruns. So, you know, I would say don't be worried about the speed that you may complete a parkrun in. They're 5 kilometres. There, as I say, there will always be people walking them, and the volunteers that run each of the parkruns will be there until the last person has crossed the line, regardless of who that is and how long they may take. There'll still be people there to cheer you across the line at the end. Yeah, they're free. You just need to register online in advance, and then you print out a barcode which you take with you. That's how they kind of keep track of who and who's been how many times and so on and so forth. Yeah, really encourage everyone to have a look at parkrun. It's very accessible. What else could you do though? There's a number of, walking and rambling. I thought it was important to mention that there's something called a tramper, which is a sort of all-terrain mobility scooter. They're available at a couple of venues around Surrey. Those are developed by the Disabled Ramblers Association. They're actually based in Guildford. And you can hire trampers at Royal Horticultural Society Gardens at Wisley and at Hatchlands Park, which is a National Trust park in sort of Clarendon area, in the middle of the county. What else could you do? Well, I thought I'd stick some random ideas down here. They may not be random to you. I don't know. You may love doing some of these activities already or be interested in trying them out. So there's a number of accessible venues to go fishing in Surrey. So not least Henfold Lake in Dorking, Godalming Angling Society have a number of wheelchair accessible platforms or spots for going, I can't think what the word is, spots for going fishing from, as do Farnham Angling Society and Edenbrook Fishery in Oxted. Surrey's home to the wonderful Bisley Rifle Ranges, which is the home of British shooting. And there's a place called the Lord Roberts Centre, which is in Bisley. It's a sports centre. It's really hidden away. It's probably one of Surrey's hidden gems in terms of sport. It can offer a great accessible experience of shooting for beginners. And there's lots of clubs you could then go on to join. So I'd say if you're interested in shooting, you could do a lot worse than to go to Bisley as a first port of call. But there are, as I say, many accessible shooting clubs across the county. And might surprise you, but they really are very welcoming. Martial arts might be a bit of a surprising one for me to put on the list, but there's an organisation called Able Karate, which is in Weybridge, and they run a Be Inspired project, which has inclusive provision for disabled adults and children. Encourage you to check them out if that's something you're interested in. Or why not try water skiing? Why not, indeed? The British Disabled Water Ski and Wakeboard Association are based at Heron Lake, right by junction 13 of the M25. I've been out on a boat with them actually, and it's incredible. They've got an awful lot of adapted equipment. So you might think that water skiing is beyond you or you could never do it, but they've got adaptations to help people who have problems with grip or maybe don't have upper limbs. There are harnesses that can be worn. There are seated water ski devices for people who might not be able to stand up on the water skis. Honestly, there are adaptations for everybody. And I think similar to Wheels for All, they would say they would claim that they could get almost anybody out on the water, I think. So if you fancy it, have a look. They're really inclusive and welcoming. So the website's there. Of course, there's a number of other community organisations that offer physical activity for disabled young people that aren't sports clubs. I've mentioned some of them already. Some of them you might be aware of or have been involved with in the past already. So there's Link Able in Woking, Halo in Guildford, The Grange in Bookham, Challenges in Guildford and Farnham. And we've already mentioned the YMCA in East Surrey as a gym, but not to forget that they also run a number of disability sports programs as well as a gym. And then, of course, there's Special Olympics Surrey, which is a specialist sports organisation, I should say, for young people with learning disability and adults in the north of the county. So if that's of interest, I'd encourage you to have a look at that. So yeah, I guess finally, I just wanted to say we have a website, activesurrey.com. There's lots of guidance on there around particularly kind of COVID safe guidance at the moment. So if you're feeling unsure about what you can safely do, you can have a look on our website, and there's information on there, the latest info around kind of COVID guidance, as well as information about getting started in various physical activities. And of course, you'll be able to access our activity finder from that website as well. If you have a query or you're unsure about anything, please do feel free to drop me an email. I or one of my team will get back to you as soon as we can. And if that's around where can I do a specific activity, by all means get in touch. If I've not talked about it today or you can't find something online, please do drop me a line. Thanks very much. That's all I had to say. I'll be around for Q&As on Wednesday, the 4th, I think. Lisa.